Let's
Hi.
Beautiful. Well, as people continue to trickle in, we will let them into the room and have them join our conversation. But hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This has been a long time setting up and getting ready for this lunch and learn, and I'm just so excited that it's finally here, especially coming off a successful MLK Day of Service in our partnership with the Seattle MLK Coalition. It's just an exciting time to be here to continue the conversation, to continue the work, and find ways to encourage other community members to continue to engage and think about the ways that they're engaging. Here at United Way, we're working side by side with our communities to build an equitable future for everyone. And our investments in advocacy are really guided by our commitment to racial justice. And that starts right here, right now, with this conversation, with all the work that we do every day. And we want you to join us in continuing to ensure that everyone has access to resources, to quality education, has enough to eat, and a safe place to call home. And to do that, we have to inform ourselves in the way that we're showing up in community, in the ways that we're showing up to help and to support. And so this is a good starting point for that. Our wonderful presenter today is Breauna Dorelus from Connecting the Cause in Atlanta. We have been working with her she's our consultant for some of our work, and we've been working with her for a very long time. Leanne Bannerman, who's in the room, was the person who was able to connect and bring her on to support our work. And Breauna is the founder of um, and is a cause consultant at Connecting the Cause, which is a consultancy that's dedicated to dismantling harmful volunteer practices that are implemented by organizations, volunteers, and this specific practices that are towards Black and Brown communities. So she started her career as an AmeriCorps member, and she spent 10 years in various volunteer management roles in humanitarian aid efforts, refugee resettlement, and ministry work. And Brianna really believes in community inclusion in all aspects of volunteer processes, spaces, and she's really dedicated her work to ensuring that service is centered around co-dreaming and not harmful charity. So, for the past 10 years as a consultant, she has served as a keynote speaker at multiple conferences. She holds different sessions and webinars, training. She's a facilitator and a builder. So, Brianna has really worked on multiple projects that help create ethos, philosophy, and practices for those who wish to walk alongside others, walk alongside our community. And her heart of the work is connected to seeing others have moments of reckoning and reimagination as they move away from charity but move to that co-dreaming space. So in her spare time, she loves playing with dinosaurs with her 5 and 3-year-olds, thrifting and having a yummy matcha latte. And she is one of the most fabulous people I've had the honor of working with. And I'm just so excited for you all to see her here today and hear her words, and hopefully walk away knowing and thinking something different. So I am so happy to pass it over to Brianna. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm so grateful. It's such I feel such good energy here already. And so I am honored to be with you all today. I think this may be going on year 4, maybe year 5 of just connecting with the volunteer team, and specifically navigating MLK Day of Service and equity and volunteerism and what it looks like to have these real practices of co-dreaming. I know that there are staff here and there may be a few tricklings of other folks. And so I'm excited and we're going to get started. I'm going to be using Menti, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. So, whichever way it tends to happen, we're just going to go with the flow. Okay, can everybody see the screen? Okay, yes, I see some thumbs up. Great. Okay, so this is how we're gonna do it. If you could go to if you're on your laptop, you can use your phone. If you're on your phone, you can use your laptop, or if you want to just follow along in Zoom, you're completely fine. You can go to www.menti.com and then put in this code 3107-8239. And once you're in, you can send me some hearts so I know you're in there. www.menti.com. Yay! The hearts are in. People are coming. Yes. Thank you. Ooh, Carrie, I see your hearts as well on your Zoom screen. Thank you. So menti.com and then the code 3107-8239. Or you could use the QR code. And this time is for us, and this mechanism of Menti is for us just to have another form of interaction. If you see at the bottom, there are some icons, bottom right. So there's a heart, there's a question mark, and then there's a almost like a thumbs up. And so we are going to use this just so I have a good pulse on what's going on with your thoughts, what's going on in your mind a little bit. So we are going to assign some meaning to these icons. So the heart throughout the presentation, if you would, if there is something that resonates with you and you're like, yes, ma'am, yes, press the heart. And you can press as many times as you want to. There's no limit. The question mark can be utilized for, oh, this is a moment. Something's happening here. I have not heard of this before. I have not thought of this before. I want to explore this further. That's going to be the question mark. Okay. I want to explore this further. And then the thumbs up. Okay. Listen to this one. It's going to be, ooh, ouch. I felt that, but that was necessary to hear. Okay. That's a little ouch, but that was necessary. Thank you for telling the truth. Thank you for saying the thing that needed to be said. Okay. Do we have it? So hearts, yes, yes, it resonates. Love it. Question mark. Oh, this is a new musing that I'm thinking about. I want to explore this more. And the thumbs up is going to be, ooh, ouch, that hurt a little bit, but you just told the truth. We feel good with that. If we feel good with that, send me some hearts. Send us some hearts. Also, yay, look at all these hearts. Okay. Also, I am a words of affirmation person, but this is not for me. This is for us to be able to see where we are all together. And also, I'm not going to be ignoring the chat. If you do not want to engage in Menti, that's completely fine. You absolutely have the autonomy to be able to put your comments in the chat, and I will be checking that periodically as well as we navigate and move forward. So, everything's sounding good. Awesome, awesome. So, I just feel honored today to be able to share and to be able to have the opportunity to be in this space with you all today around shared responsibility, shared future, designing community centered service. So we are going to hop right in and get started. There is a poll here. It is anonymous. Please, if you could, let me know what role you are showing up in as this moment so I can understand sort of kind of where we're coming from. If you feel like you're showing up in a different role in a different space, feel free to put it in the chat on Zoom so I know where you are and where you're showing up right now, because that is definitely going to help me as we sort of kind of navigate this space. I also realize that we can hold multiple roles and multiple hats at the same time. So there is absolutely room for that as well to be able to show up in that way. And so what time is it there? Is it 10:14? 10:14? Okay. So I'm probably up around 10:14. I'm a little bit up. I'm rolling. When my on my good days, I'm rolling out of bed around 9:30. I'm not a morning person at all. So thank you all for showing up and being with all of us today. Awesome, awesome. So we're gonna come in, frame our time. I always think this is important because based on the conversation and based on the ways that we show up, I want to make sure that we understand and recognize what this conversation is going to be about. I don't want to have any gotcha moments where you're in a conversation, you're like, wait a second, what's happening? But I do want to communicate and center ourselves so we understand sort of kind of where we are. So you can read this while I read this out loud. And it says, we believe in community in all its forms. We are connected to an organization that was created to amplify and support community, but creating harm towards the communities we serve and partner alongside derails that mission and our own. So we then must consistently and fervently ask ourselves, what am I doing to create or carry out harm that derails that holistic mission? What parts of that must I be accountable to for creating that harm? And what can I do in my power to repair and rebuild? So, in this conversation today, we are going to be talking about the ways that we can come together in our different roles, our different responsibilities, and design service and come into service with co-dreaming or community-centric care and service. We also are going to talk about things that are harmful when it comes to volunteerism. We are also going to talk about root causes of the reasons why we have to even volunteer in the first place, the reasons why we have to have institution and organizations in the first place, and the birth of some of that. We also are going to think critically about not just our role and the title that's been given to us, but the way in which we show up in that role and in that title on a day-to-day basis when it comes to community care. And it's not just a navigation of the best practices. This will not be a navigation of this is what the sector in its current form communicates is the best way to do things. Oh, we are going to talk about centering the community in the ways that we've all seen community show up and what their ideal of success may look like, which is sometimes we, hit it on the dot, and oftentimes we completely miss the mark. And so there will be a self-examination of that for us from a personal perspective, but there will also be a nod to institution and the ways in which we have um, subconsciously and consciously created barriers for that community centrism to take place. So I want us to always come back to these particular thoughts of what am I doing to create or carry out harm that derails the holistic mission of amplifying and supporting community. There's accountability here. We got to lean into accountability before we move forward in understanding what it looks like to repair and what it looks like to rebuild. And do we even understand or recognize what repair and rebuild looks like in our different contexts? So that's some of what we'll be sharing and thinking through today. So I know that for me, I am not from Atlanta. I am actually from a much smaller town called Statesboro, Georgia, where if anybody knows or ever heard of Statesboro, that would be great. But if you haven't, I mean, you're all the way in Washington, right? Like, why would, I mean, in King County, so why would you? But if I could describe Statesboro, with me growing up, we would hang out. We would hang out. Oh, Joe Burris, the home of Georgia Southern. I think this is the first time in like 6 calls where somebody actually knew something about about Georgia Southern. So that's awesome. That's where I went. Yay, Joe. I'm gonna send you a something. That should have been a trivia question. So we used to hang out like in the Walmart parking lot. Like that was our like thing to do, as some, small towns do. And I remember growing up, I am from a farm. Um, my dad's a farmer. He is still a farmer. And we continuously would go to town. I would meet people. And if some of you have heard me before, you all know that my dad and my mom are just such an inspiration to me in the ways that I grew up. And when we would go to town, he would say, Half pint, come over here, call me Half pint. And he would just be like, hey, this your cousin. And I'd say, hey, cousin. And I would not be introduced to their name, not introduced to their degree. I don't know where they worked. I don't know where they lived. All I knew is that we were cousins. If you've had that experience, I see some hearts of that like resonating, like, yep, I know what you're talking about. And what my dad did is every now and then he'd be like, "This your cousin," and I'd say, "Hey, cousin," and they'd say, "Hey, cousin," and cousin consisted of not one nationality, not one ethnicity. Cousins were just cousins. And what I realized years and years later is that my father was creating a tapestry of care for me in where we were, right? And so one of the things that was so instrumental is that when I saw a cousin, my father relating that to me, I literally said, okay, if I see a cousin somewhere, because I trust my dad, because I trust this tapestry, he is creating a community of care that wherever I go and I see a cousin and I'm in trouble or I'm in need or I need to get somewhere or I'm stranded or whatever the case may be, I could find a cousin and I could get back home. And I could find someone that I trusted because of the connection that my dad had that created this tapestry for me in Statesboro. And so, as I think about the formation of community, the formation of what that looked like for me, that is the beginnings of my understanding of community care. So, transfer, go to Georgia Southern. I have these aha moments where there's this thing called the nonprofit sector that I'm like, what is this? What is this thing? I realized that in the most, of course, basic ways that we've all sort of kind of experienced, oh, you can make money by helping people. Like, what does that look like? Let me do that. Such a rose-colored glasses of what that meant. I traveled to Honduras and Costa Rica, and during those times, I worked and served in an orphanage. And I mean, I had one of those moments of like, oh, how can I do this for the rest of my life? And one of those instances that I'm sure we've all had a time or two that brought us to this work. And experiencing that, I then joined AmeriCorps and I moved to Atlanta, and my dad was like, "Oh, my baby girl got a big job in the big city." And I mean, we know it. AmeriCorps now was like, "Yeah, dad, big job in the big city." But he was proud nonetheless, and I was actually really excited. And I say all the time, like I felt like Mary Tyler Moore, like of just like throwing my hat up. These are skyscrapers that I haven't seen before. Like I'm so excited. Right, Connor? Big job of making $1,000 a month. Listen, huh? Right, okay. So I start my AmeriCorps journey. I'm really excited about it. And it hits me like a ton of bricks instantly. I literally thought that in that moment that I was just going to be doing the extended work of creating a tapestry of care for people. And that is not what that was. I learned that there are things called KPIs and things called strategic plans and board governance and volunteer hours. And not only did I learn that those things exist, but the weightiness of those things in relation to the work. And as a Black woman going through my career in AmeriCorps, then in humanitarian aid, then in refugee resettlement, and me serving in as a volunteer director, as an AmeriCorps program director, as a director of volunteers, I started to feel this chasm in my heart between what I grew up with and what my father introduced me to and whatever this is. And it was not the same. And I had one of those moments where I'm like, wait a second, pity enters the chat, paternalism enters the chat. Me being in meetings where I'm talking to CSR folks and faith-based folks, and me being the director, me being the manager, but all questions being directed towards a white intern, or situations where most of the ones that are being served look like me, and the ones that we are intentionally recruiting do not. And asking the question, why is there such a clear and distinct line between the giver and the given to? And how come it's such a barrier for that to be crossed? And not just a barrier, but there's an intentional hindrance that is taking place. And so I have this moment of righteous indignation of wanting to like throw the table and flip the tables on all of the nonprofit sector and blah, blah, blah. And I got humbled like really quick because, oh, Breauna, back in college, you went to an orphanage and you served and you took pictures of children and you did not ask permission and you put a very patronizing, savioristic caption on your Facebook about how you are digging a well for this entire community. And you had a very Western elitist perspective on your service. And how there was a moment that I'm realizing and noticing even the things that I did in those moments. We don't even have to travel to a different country for that to happen. We just need to travel to different zip codes. We just need to travel across a railroad track, a different street, and that this is a perpetual, uh, deeply rooted issue when we have seen things distort what volunteerism is supposed to be. And so I made a decision and I was like, it's our responsibility that today and every day, and I want you to know this, you have permission to interrogate the good. You have permission to think about something that you love. Think about something that, I mean, the experience that I had in Honduras ushered me into this work. And it was the very place that I created deep harm. And two things can be existing at the same time that we have to grapple with and that we have to navigate. And we can't continue communicating that volunteerism is just a nice thing. And it's full of altruistic people who just want to give back. We have to know that if we're giving back, something was taken first. We have to recognize that even in our day to day, the same police officers, the same teachers that came to support, that came to rescue, are also the same teachers that told my brother dehumanizing things as a young Black man. Those police officers who came to support and rescue and who did the basketball charity games are the same ones that created a space where my father had to experience police brutality in my neighborhood. These, there's nuance to this, right? That we must hold in these spaces. And so when we love something so much, it's also our responsibility to understand the good, bad, the ugly, the inner workings, the why, the what we don't want to do again, the things that we want to duplicate because they worked that one time, and let's try it out and let's test it out and let's navigate it. And it's okay to interrogate volunteerism. And even in some spaces, we may not have heard the word, or a lot of people may have not heard the word harm and volunteerism, or injustice and volunteerism, or inequity and volunteerism, right? Or ego and volunteerism, right? But there is space for that because those things do happen. And so I think there is a deeper experience that we have to continue to take place. Trishan, you said something in the chat. When I first started community organizing, I loved connecting with volunteers and engaging with them with an inspiring mission, especially to get them connected deeper to their own community. But then the facade broke a bit when I had supervisors telling me to pressure the 83-plus-year-old volunteers to show up for additional phone banking shifts. Heartbreaking having the KPIs take precedent over the real objective of volunteerism. This is the real, right? Trishan, thank you so much for taking the time to share that, because we've all seen it, right? Like in some shape or form, we've seen it, we recognize it, and we understand it. And so there is a necessity that as we have shared responsibility, that's an accountability first, right? So I want to talk about this image for a second. Um, on one side, we have some loops. On the other side, we don't have some loops. I'm going to try to not to describe it as much as possible. But I want us to think a little bit about how these two images make us feel. Okay, so hold this image in your head. I'm going to take a moment so you take it all in. Think about some of the feelings, some of the thoughts that come to you when we think about these two images. And you can use the Zoom chat, or you can use the Menti, and it is anonymous. What feelings, what came about as you're looking at the loops? What did the loops invoke? I don't know which one that is. Evoke for you. What do the loops specifically invoke for you? And you can put that in the left side, all the different loops, all of the loops. So there's a lot of chaos to clarity, so that you're taking both of them at the same time and sort of kind of thinking through that. That's okay. That's good. Scattered, confusion, messy, chaos, anxiety, unease, infinite and endless, anxiety, uncentered, unraveling, stressful. Oh, these are good. Chaos. Aaliyah, you said the left side reality, right side expectation. So good. Anxiety and unease, scattered. So good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Opposites for both of them. Reality. Okay, can I go back? Let me see if I can go back. I used to could okay. All right, so we talked about the one with the loops. Now, the ones that are a little bit more streamlined, we could talk a little bit about what that represents, right? You're taking that in. So, what feelings do the lines invoke for you? Some of you already said it in the next one, but would love for you to share here for those who didn't. Amy, you said the image on the left is lovely, information chaos, ready for purpose. The right one represents me working on all those loop-de-loops to bring about coherent thoughts and ideas. I don't see either as bad or good. So good. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Organized, connections, continuity, intention, ordered, clarity, purpose. Oh, it's all good, Sophia. Because some of you said like from chaos to calm, some of you said from unease to clarity. Ooh, purpose. That's sort of kind of coming up. That's the goal. Predictable. Alignment, organization, direction. Okay. Meditative, structured. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh no, these are all so good. Okay, so we have that the loops, the biggest word is anxiety, chaos, messy. The lines, purpose, direction, goal, clarity. Let's take a look. When we think about our work, when we think about community care, which one looks more like community care? Which one feels more like community care? I think for me, as I navigate and look between these two things, somebody told me the other day, they were like, they related. They said community care is love. It's love in action. Community care is love in action. And then I thought about love, and I was like, oh, I know which one love looks like. Love, I know what my marriage looks like. Child, well, that's a different. Okay, like there is the what comes with love, care, community, repair, right? Vulnerability, openness, transparency, trying something again and then not trying it, and then realizing it wasn't the best thing and having to forgive, and then having to circle back around, and then circle back around, and then come back around, and then have a more clarifying conversation, and then a year from now having to have a different conversation. And sometimes what we try to do y'all know when I don't do this, but y'all know that pasta maker, like if you roll dough and then there's like a machine and you put the pasta through and then it makes nice noodles. Sometimes I feel like that's what we want to do with community, with programs, so that community is more palatable to what we have produced. So community is more palatable to the program that we have designed for them to fit in, for them to occupy, right? We make just enough room for them to fit, but not enough room for them to grow. Just enough room for our services to be provided, but not enough room for pushback and feedback, right? And so on the other side, I don't demonize. I think Amy may have said it. You are right ahead of me. I don't demonize the others being good or bad because I also feel like clarity is kind, right? In a lot of ways, clarity is kind. And in a lot of ways, there are messy systems that need to be clarified so that community members understand and know how to navigate it, right? Sometimes our programs and our procedures look like the left side is so loopy and convoluted that community members are not able to partner with us because there is a sense of indirection and not missional focus. So let me be clear, there are times and places for both, but what I often see in my work is we either do one or the other and we don't see the benefit of both. And what I am challenging us to do is create the muscle and the discernment for what it looks like to be able to rhythmically go back and forth so that the purpose of it is to navigate and see what's best for the community, right? Amy, I'm going to read yours. For me, the left is more about community, roaming around, bumping into people you know. It feels like a party. I love that. I feel like the other is more order and less getting to know others because we have to follow a rule or a line. We need both at certain, yes, we're on the same page. We need both at certain points. We need to run around and bump into one another to find out what the cause is. Then we come together in a line and fulfill the purpose. Love, love, love. Yes. This is what it looks like. I'll tell you a perfect example. In my work, when I was a volunteer engager, I didn't need you to go through a 16-point background check to sit at a table at a community meeting to pass out flyers. Okay? Also, you may need to go through the 16 background checks if you're navigating children, right? So there is this ebb and flow that needs to take place as we're navigating. So this is what it looks like to really hone in on that. I want to talk very quickly about a framework. David Park is a colleague of mine, and he has a framework around the solar system and how, okay, I'm not, what is it, an astrologer, astronomist? I don't study the planets and I don't study the universe, whatever that is. Okay. But I think this is a great example of what we're talking about. Oftentimes, when we think about the sun and the center of the universe being all the planets are kind of circulating around the sun, what we have to remember and navigate and really think about is who's the sun? What's the gravitational pull for all other things, right? So, right now, in a lot of spaces, the sun is the volunteers, the sun are donors, the sun becomes board members. So, all of the other things gravitationally are being pulled, right, by these particular roles. And where's community? Oh, community is over here. And what happens is community is being pulled by the whims, musings, decision-making power of volunteers, donors, board members, right? So when we take a look at how we navigate the ways in which our institutions are set up, the ways in which we volunteer and serve. We have to take an account of who are we doing this for and how are we doing it, right? Connor, we're gonna have a different conversation about Earth as impact metrics because I didn't even mean to do that, and it just so happened to be that. So we'll have to have a different conversation about that. But what if it was flipped and we really reframe what this is always supposed to be? Did y'all see the flip? The flip just happened with community being at the center of this work. And so all of the gravitational pull has community at the center. So our strategic planning, our board members, our impact metrics volunteers, the community, the way in which they want to navigate constituents, clients, the movement. Now, what does this require? In all of the missing middle, how do you know what community flourishing looks like? How do you know what community success is? Relationship, continual diving in, relationship, and connection. I want to talk to us this last these last slides. I want to talk to us as the individual, and I also want to talk to us as institution. Oftentimes we are in the unhelping cycle, and we are in it because this is what traditional volunteerism has taught us. It's because so much of traditional volunteerism is seeped in white supremacy, is seeped in there's a right way and a wrong way, is seeped in saviorism, is seeped in money being the only way, it's seeped in unhealthy power dynamics, right? So there's a lot of instances where we've been taught this and we have to identify it from a personal perspective what this looks like. So number one, traditional volunteering has taught us that we have a helper identity, that volunteerism gives us identity. I am someone who helps. I am a good person. I am generous, right? This identity that we seep ourselves in, it feels good to us and it also centers us, right? So the story becomes about who we are and not about the flourishing of community. So we become the protagonist of someone else's story. We become the hero. We become the person who's in charge. So then, if we're the person in charge, then the gratitude economy takes place. Yes, Leanne, so much of this also applies to donors. So much of this applies to giving spaces. Absolutely. So we get into gratitude economy. So now that we're the protagonist and now that we're a hero, what did they do to Superman and Spider-Man once they're, thank you so much. That building almost fell on me and you rescued me. Your web swooped me up and saved the day. Thank you, Batman. We're expected and taught to expect thanks. So then the thank you email, the appreciation event, that volunteer annual thing that we do, right? We found value in that. But when we need gratitude to feel okay about our volunteering, we've actually made the community responsible for our emotional well-being. We sit in a place where we have now asked the community, if you why aren't you grateful? And why do you have opinion about whether you want the blue backpack or the green backpack? Or why does your dietary restriction matter? You're just getting food. Like, you should be glad you're getting food. Why does it matter what time of day? You just need to show up and you just need to be here because we're giving out free stuff, right? We get to a place of not just volunteering, but we move into entitlement because we're a volunteer. We move into entitlement because we are a staff member. We move into entitlement because we are creating a space where now this an unhealthy, unhelping cycle where because you depend on me, I actually depend on you for gratitude and well-being so I can feel better, right? So we get caught up in these traps. And it's funny, y'all, because we don't want to identify that we do these things. But then when you really think about it for a moment and you feel that uncomfortable feeling, I want us to intentionally volunteer and think about the feelings that come up, the navigation that comes up. I'll never forget, I was doing a volunteer orientation. I was saying some of these things, and a woman comes up to me. She helped mentorship at a YMCA. She was like, I mentor little black boys and girls, and they are my kids. They are my kids, and I love my kids. But when I go into Walmart and I see the same age group of kids, I don't know how to deal with them because I see them as a threat. I don't know how to navigate them because those aren't my kids. So, what we tend to do in spaces of service and what we have to push the envelope in to show this to volunteers and partners is that you can put on your hat because you know the black folks that are palatable to you. But then you walk out of those service spaces, you walk out of volunteerism, and you still treat that same population without dignity and respect, right? So there's a space that we have to assess and recognize that what is our heart, what is our minds doing in this helper identity, in this gratitude economy. We then start to have an expertise assumption, right? When sometimes we can feel like the volunteer or us, we have something the community lacks. So because we have something that the community needs, like knowledge, skills, and resources, it positions the institution, it positions us as sufficient while they are deficient, right? But we have to think about if the community does have the things they need and they're just missing that power and that access, right? So there's an expertise assumption that takes place. There's a convenience expectation. And listen, let me say I'm guilty of all of these, by the way. After looking, assessing, navigating, right? Like I'm guilty of all of these. We want volunteering to fit our schedule, our interests, our comfort zone. We need nice evenings, nice weekends, tasks we enjoy, locations that work for us, right? But I get that. And at what point is the community and what they need is being conformed to our calendars and not theirs? And I did this as a volunteer engager for years. I prioritize when can volunteers come in versus what is the best time for a community to show up. And how can we insert volunteers into that and create different time, spaces, mechanisms for all of it to work together versus fitting it in a very tiny box that only some people get to benefit from, right? Jennifer, you say many, many years ago, I was a volunteer coordinator and ran a holiday toy drive at a nonprofit focused on foster children and youth. Many volunteers and the donors who received the children's wish list had opinions and judgments about what the kids were asking for. Thank you for sharing that real life examples. I'm telling y'all, I'm not just pulling this out of my behind, right? Like these are real things that are taking place. Um, I'm trying to follow. I see many. Okay, got that part. Amy, I'm more aware and working through not needing the thank you when I volunteer. I'm working on myself not needing the validation. And let me tell you, it's an ongoing process to just be grateful that I'm able to be of service. Thank you for saying that out loud because a lot of folks in the world won't think that way, won't say that. It's all altruistic. It's all good. It was a workshop I was in, and someone said out loud, "How dare you assess my good intentions? You don't have the right to assess what my intentions are." And when we have to sit with these things that are confronting us, we have to be able to understand where that comes from, why we feel this way, and what it looks like because we have to navigate these spaces. I see Harold, this hits home. I say that Joe Burris, I say the same about people who are hired because of lived experience. Absolutely. That is a real thing. And then because of their lived experience, there is a tokenizing that takes place. There's not a room for them to be able to be a part of the decision making, but you are there because of the lived experience you share. So thank you so much for being our mascot, right? So you might be in an unhelping cycle, like I already said, feeling hurt when community doesn't seem grateful, telling stories about volunteering where you're the main character. And let's be real, when I was in volunteerism, I was specifically asked by marketing in multiple organizations, can you get me a good volunteer story? And you know the ones that are the good volunteer stories, the ones that are going to prick the heartstrings of the donors, the ones that are going to show a community member not having autonomy, but then because of what you did, because of what the organization did, now they have a whole new lease on life. Not the partnerships ones where the community members decide to take action and then reaches out to the organization. There's a partnership that develops and a result is solutions that are mutual, right? We want the other stories. Another way of determining this, of course, you assume to know what community needs without asking. Nobody wants to admit in spaces of service that we're not asking what the community needs, and we don't ask what the community needs, or we only ask once, or we only ask once a year, or we only assume what they need, or we have the feedback mechanism that's the survey, and we never tell them the survey results. There's 16 different ways of thinking we're doing something, and then all of a sudden, wait a second, what does this look like to actually do it well? From an organizational perspective, of course, from an institution, most organizations don't resist community power because they're being malicious, right? They resist because the structures they exist within and have created make power sharing costly. We don't name the cost. And then when we actually name the cost is too high. So, Leanne spoke about it earlier. Funder accountability versus community accountability. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, this is a versus. And in a lot of ways, it doesn't have to be a versus, right? Your funders require specific metrics, timelines, outcomes. This grant from volunteers requires specific outcomes. Boards require specific outcomes. And the community may want something different that requires a slower pace. That requires not a line in the grant that communicates the slower paced things that happen. So when funder expectations and community preferences conflict, who wins? Who shows up on top? Right? Who creates those spaces? The efficiency versus self-determination. If we do this right, if we do this well, if we do this intentionally with real impact, community decision making takes longer. It is complex. It doesn't fit neatly. So, in what ways can we have these rhythms so that the communities choose the organizational standards, right? Aaliyah, you say this. You measure success by how much by how much you gave and not what, oh goodness, and not by what community gained. How do we get organizations to move away from this? This is the central question, Aaliyah. Absolutely. It's on one side, philanthropy demands these things of us, right? Well, at the same time, the missional work is the center of volunteers. And Leanne, and let community get it wrong sometimes and learn from that. Yes, we mess up. Why can't we give them the grace to mess up? Do y'all, how many times I've been in rooms and they said, oh, we tried that one time. We're not doing that again. We're not giving them autonomy because they didn't know how to navigate it, because they didn't know how to deal with it, with not recognizing so many of the nuances that take place as a result of that, right? We did the unhelping cycle of expertise versus lived experience, these credentials, these trainings, this professional knowledge. But what happens when our professional training says one thing and community says another? What happens when the best practices are not the best practices for everybody? They're only best practice for some folks. Then whose knowledge do we intertwine in our work, right? Okay, marketing folks, brand versus the community voice. Organizations, they do need consistent messaging. And at the same time, I'll give you an example. Some of the best examples of brand is transparency. When you say you messed up and you know you messed up and you communicated that you messed up and that you are working towards the honesty of being able to partner in a real way. The best brand making is transparency, is a transparency full of, is a brand full of transparency, is a brand full of vulnerability, is a brand full of this is how we didn't do it right. And this is how we are making the moves to repair and rebuild to do it better next time. Can that be the brand of the nonprofit sector? That we don't have to show up as having all the answers, because when we do that, we completely discount the community for the answers that they have, right? And this last one that we all navigate and all deal with is organizational survival versus community liberation. And we oftentimes, like I heard this when I was just getting in the sector. The goal of this organization is to put ourselves out of business because that means that poverty is alleviated. And that means that we don't have any more work to do. And I hear that over and over again, but we've created our organizations to design ourselves to survive. That's how we've created our organizations. We've created our organizations to make sure we stay in business. And this is the framework for how we build. So, is the organization working towards really being able to say, we we want to work to transfer power, decision making, thought processes into an infusion of community work versus what does it look like for us to keep and stay, right? I'll never forget there was a one of my colleagues was talking to me and they said we celebrated something pretty beautiful today and also pretty harming. And I was like, celebrating something like that. What do you mean? And she said, we celebrated, it was a big thing, our 250th year as a nonprofit organization in our community. And I was like, 250 years is a long time. And she said, instead of us, she said, I wish we would have had the conversation on why and the root cause of why we've been in the same community for 250 years instead of having a celebration that we're still here. And that just resonated so much with me because we love to celebrate our philanthropy, but we don't like to challenge the fact that we are still a part of the problem. And there is a realization of needing to do that. Jennifer, you said, yep, this is the nonprofit industrial complex. Absolutely. Connor, you heard that when you entered the space in 2017. Yep, I heard it from then on. And Joe Burris, there's no one bringing home a paycheck who wants to put their, can I throw something? Is there something I can throw? Yeah, there's no one bringing home a paycheck who wants to put their job out of business. And that's why there is a real navigation of what does it look like to be a part of a organization that is equitable, that is also paying, and that the goal is community liberation. And the goal is not organizational survival, because there are examples and real folks out there that are funding the liberation, right? Funding the community being at the center. And Connor, this is the industrial complex because we also need a job to pay the bills, right? This is the work. So there is a constant navigation that we are can we just make the point that we are holding all these things right at the same time? We are holding all of this and navigating all of this. So, yes, my North Star, yes, my center is going to be, if I'm having to deal with all of this, the least thing I can work towards getting right is listening to community, is navigating what they look like. If I'm going to have to be in this work, let me do the work that centers their success, right? And not be in the cogwheel of something that I don't even believe in. Like really not having to navigate this in a real and fruitful way, right? The things that we do in institution, oftentimes we professionalize people out of their purpose. We have all of the barriers, all of the spaces and places of this work. And there's a real navigation of how do we pull back the pieces and where do we share power and where do we share care so that any organization, there's a difference between I'm an organization in the community and I'm a community organization. There's a difference, right? I'm an organization in the community begs to think about an extraction that is taking place. There's a disconnect in the ecosystem of the navigation of the care that shows itself. There's a real instance of, oh, we might parachute in and parachute out, right? We'll ask you questions if we need you, but then other times if we don't need you, we're gonna keep going with our programs and services, right? And the moments where someone says thank you, the moments where someone says you're doing the right thing should not prohibit us for asking the next questions, right? Who else, where else can we understand the root and grasp it at the root so that we can continue to make change? So, this is what I don't want you to hear. And these are common misconceptions. Breauna said that volunteer preferences and feelings don't matter. Leanne said that donors don't matter, right? Like that's not a thing that is that I am wanting to communicate here. It's that we have selected organizational structure. We have selected volunteer preferences. We have selected donor expectations over community care, right? Especially when those things don't align with what the success of the community has already communicated, right? The community Since my role is in marketing, my community is the folks that read the newsletter. Since I'm in development, my folks in my community is the donors. My community, since I'm Alexis, my volunteer community are the volunteers, right? So, yes to everything you're saying, super cute, but I have to work over here with my people because this is my job. And guess what? Your job wouldn't exist without the community members and the work that they're doing and them being in existence. So let's reshape this, right? And get back in that framework, right? This means, since we're in the long game, we can't respond to emergencies and immediate need. I didn't say that, right? If people need food, feed the people. If people need clothes, clothe the folks. If that building needs to be painted, paint it. But don't paint it because you want to paint it. Paint it because they want to paint it, right? Don't don't be in a position where, well, we can't do A, B, and C because it's going to take too long. But if the impact is literally what clients and community members, neighbors are asking, what does it look like to create a space for that to take place over the other 50, 11 initiatives y'all got? When I say y'all, I don't know what initiatives y'all have. Y'all as a nonprofit sector have, that we keep rushing to those things without understanding the real priorities. So this is what I want us to continue to center in, um, the framework of co-dreaming that I created some years back. The first thing we have to do is identify and uproot these harmful volunteer, donor, marketing, all these practices so we can understand the root cause of how and why formal volunteerism exists in the first place. And we tend to devalue neighboring in institution. We tend to devalue mutual aid in institution, right? And we perpetuate that power hoarding and saviorism because saviorism sometimes makes the world go round. Because if we can put that in a volunteer or orientation, if we could give a good story, they keep coming, right? We keep having the folks come through the doors to help and serve. We have to identify the ways that we center organizational systems and volunteer preferences and really management over communing alongside community. We have to work towards a now and a future that centers community as the architects of their thriving, who are innately worthy of that care. And we have to understand that they're the holders of wisdom and that power and that agency, and that we're meant to walk alongside, right? So when we think about designing community-centered service, that happens when we know our role, our right role, and understand that every blueprint must be rooted in community wisdom and not institutional convenience or individual ego, agenda, or acclaim. And in my work, I have to constantly ask myself, Breauna, is this your ego? Whose agenda is this? Who will get the acclaim for this? What does it look like for us to embody this on a consistent basis? And y'all, we're getting the awards, we're getting the grants, but at what point are we justifying, well, let me just do it this way a little bit because it's for the good, and it's really not for the good, right? I'm not going to go through this. I just want you to see it. This is just a visual framework of co-dreaming, of just something I consistently go through and I continue to navigate, of understanding what the purpose is of all of this. In the middle is this understanding that we are creating an ecosystem of community care, and that community care already lives within the community. And we are working to become a part of that ecosystem that doesn't hurt or harm. And in order to do this, we first have to understand and be aware and name the harms that we do and say them out loud and say them often and say them with the bravado that we did when we do good things. We have to work towards the unlearning and the shifting of agency. One day when I was a volunteer engager, I took my role, my job description, and I highlighted in what ways do I have the power to make this decision, and who else should be making this decision that isn't me? Who else should I be bringing alongside to help me or to lead this particular part of my job description? Because this isn't supposed to be on me, right? Honorable stewardship. When we start to shift agency, we start to recognize that we have to reimagine our relationships with community members, with programs, with services, with clients, with partners. That it's no longer about the extraction, but it's about how can I be in right relationship and honor the fact that you are a partner alongside. One of the things that um, one of the clients I have consistently does is in marketing, before they run any story about a particular community member, it has to be sent to the community member first and everybody who was mentioned in that, so that they are the ones that have the autonomy to say print. A different organization goes far a little bit further down the or up the river, and they say, if you want to, you can write your experience and we will pay you for the time that you've committed to sharing your story, right? So they become a part of the process instead of just an end user that then has to approve or deny, right? As we move into the reimagining relationship, there is a point where we have to say, wait a second, all before we kept hearing, yes, you're doing good. Yes, you're doing good. Yes, you're doing good. Now that we're actually honoring relationship, we're hearing, no, you're not doing good. No, you're not doing good. That is a gift. And that is a privilege to be able to sit down and talk with people and hear no, and hear y'all didn't do this right. Because what that now shows is that they are no longer focused on what you're going to take from them if they say the wrong thing, but they actually feel in relationship because they get to say no, because they get to share their thoughts. And so then you get into accountability and repair, and you get to actually get to a point where somebody said you messed up, and then you get to fix it. What a gift to be able to hone in on that. And then we're able to get to that liberation in action where institution is not controlling ways that people care for each other, but they serve as a facilitator and a conduit for neighbors to neighbor. And that is what it looks like to continue to go through the co-dreaming framework in the process to be able to do that. I see that there's some chats. Tristan hit the nail on the head. Oh, hit the nail on the head, Connor. Was just thinking, granted, I don't want to detract from some of blame, which rightfully belongs with the charitable sector. But then on the flip side, we have corporations scraping in record high profits who then feel so proud and seek community consumer gratitude for how giving they are. Oh, absolutely. And this is for Connor, your comment about the undercurrent to all of this is that we live in a very extractive form of capitalism. Oh, couldn't we talk about this for just so long for all of these ways that is coming up? And so oftentimes this is the last thing I'll say before we can just open it up and start to share, is this philosophy. We like a lot of frou-frou filler words, but what is like when we start to dig into philosophy over the actual practice of caring for one another. Um, because we tend to do that with our statements, all of our statements in the world, the DEI statement, the equity statement, the HR statement, this statement, that statement. But we have to be in a place because if we don't, we'll continue broken trust, unfulfilled mission, the hamster wheel of harm, and more of the same. But of course, if we really start addressing in real ways and start thinking about our roles, our responsibilities, and how they align with success, and if we don't know what success looks like for community members in relation to our role, in relation to the institution, then we have work to do because there's so much good that happens when we do, and we're able to design these real spaces of care and concern. So I'm going to stop there. If there's anyone who has thoughts, opinions, musings, comments, we can use the next couple of minutes to be able to just wrap and tap and talk it out. Because I do want to give space for anybody who has any comments or wants to share anything. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see faces if they are there, and we can open it up. And if not, that's okay too. I'll just turn it over back to Alexis. But I did want to give space and room to be able to hear your thoughts and give voice. Going once, going twice. I'm about to turn over to Alexis. Okay, awesome. Alexis, it's all yours. Thank you all
Yeah,
so,
oh
so
my
very
goodness.
much. Thank you for
Thank you
your
so much.
everything.
No, this was a really great conversation, and I think it is opening up just at least the thought and the conversation around how some of the work just functions or how we're showing up. And I really appreciated all the different aspects of looking, whether it was donor, volunteer, the organization. We really covered a lot of different things. And Brianna, I loved seeing your new ecosystem of community care. I think that image was really helpful to kind of keep the conversation really clear and just looking at all the different areas. If anybody after this call has questions or thoughts that they're wanting to share but didn't feel like they could share in this space, please feel free to message me, send me an email at asilva@uwkc.org, and I can forward it on to Brianna. But we're so thankful that all of you came and joined us today. We're very appreciative and hope that you take some of the things you learned today and use it as you continue forward in the sector and continue showing up to volunteer and support community. And we hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thank you so much. And that is going to be it. Thank you,
Oh,
everybody.
sorry. Really
Oh,
quickly,
please.
there was somebody who asked about just connecting. I'm on LinkedIn, so just Breauna Dorelus, just connect with me on LinkedIn, and I answer DMs. And Breauna at connectingthecause.com. I'll just put it in the chat. Um,
Yes.
so you can connect with me. I love impromptu tea Zooms, and not tea as in tea, but tea as in drinking tea. To hear about your thoughts and to hear about musings and brainstorming. So please hit me up. I'm a one woman show. So if you reach out to me on Instagram or connecting the cause as far as the website or DM in LinkedIn, you'll be getting me. So feel free to reach out. And if you have any other thoughts and stuff, I'm open to them. So thank you all so much. Sorry, I forgot to share that part.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. and a good rest of the week.